Gloria Whitman stood beside her son's casket, the scent of lilies, pressing into her memory like the weight of the grief itself. The funeral home buzzed with muffled condolences, black coats and hands that squeezed hers too tightly, as if by doing so they could somehow touch her pain. Her fingers trembled against the edge of the polished wood. Jason, her only child, gone at 44. A swift and ruthless cancer had stolen him away in under 3 months, a timeline so cruel it left no room for last words, for goodbyes that mattered. She was 69 and had lived through the death of her husband 5 years prior, but nothing, not even that, compared to this. No parent should have to bury their child. Rachel, her daughter-in-law of 17 years, moved through the room with the elegance of someone performing grief. Her black dress clung flawlessly to her figure, her makeup perfectly intact, except for the delicate dabbing of tears with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. She'd been Jason's college sweetheart, the one Gloria had welcomed into the family with open arms. For years, Gloria had treated her as the daughter she never had until now. "I just need some air," Rachel whispered, squeezing Gloria's hand before slipping toward the rear exit. Gloria nodded numbly, unaware that the truth she was about to hear would split open what was left of her mourning heart. The ache in her knees reminded her to take her medication. She left the service quietly, moving slowly down the carpeted hallway with her cane, each step deliberate, her body still raw with the stiffness of grief. As she neared a side alcove, the low murmur of voices stopped her. "She's pushing 70, Rachel was saying, her tone unusually bright, almost cheerful. "It's where she belongs anyway." "I can't believe you're doing this today of all days," another woman said, a laugh, barely masked. "Please," Rachel scoffed. "I've played the grieving widow long enough. Once this show is over, I can finally breathe. The house is mine. Jason made sure of that." Gloria froze. A pulse of heat rushed through her chest, her grip tightening on the cane until her knuckles went white. "She signed everything over to us after Harold died," Rachel went on, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Said it was for probate to avoid the hassle. Now it's all mine. No one's contesting anything." The old witch. Out of my hair. It hit Gloria with a force, stronger than any shove. That was how Rachel saw her. After years of shared birthdays, Christmas mornings, whispered conversations in hospital waiting rooms, she turned, slipping away unnoticed. The hallway spun slightly. She paused by the restroom to steady herself, but the cold sting of betrayal had already cut deeper than her son's death. Jason hadn't even been buried yet, and Rachel was already laying claim to everything, discarding her like yesterday's junk mail. Back in the viewing room, Gloria walked stiffly toward the front, every step an effort not to collapse into the nearest chair and weep. Jason's face looked peaceful, too peaceful. Had he known, had he suspected his wife would move on so swiftly? Rachel returned shortly after linking arms with Gloria, as if nothing had happened. "We'll get through this," she murmured, voice honeyed with false sorrow. Gloria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The words "you liar" pressed against her teeth, but she swallowed them. This wasn't the time. Not yet. As the funeral ended, the attendees filed out slowly, some whispering prayers, others dabbing eyes. Rachel leaned closer and said something about taking Gloria home. Gloria let her believe the act was still working. But inside, something had shifted. A tremor that warned of the storm to come. Rachel thought she had won. That Gloria was too old, too powerless, too blind. But she was wrong. The law office of Myers and Lang was tucked into a brick building downtown, unassuming from the outside, but steeped in quiet authority. Gloria sat on a leather chair near the polished mahogany table, hands folded neatly on her lap, her cane resting against the side. Her joints ached, but her spine remained straight. She had dressed with care in her navy suit and pearl earrings, the same ones she wore to Jason's college graduation. She wanted to be remembered with dignity today. Across from her sat Rachel, poised. Poised was the only word for her. She wore a charcoal gray blazer and heels that clicked confidently across the hardwood floors when she entered the room. Her expression was serene, like she'd just stepped out of a corporate meeting. No trace of grief, just expectation. Gloria looked at her and saw the woman she'd overheard just days ago casually plotting her exile. The memory tasted like metal in her mouth. Ben and Chloe. Jason and Rachel's children sat quietly at the end of the table. Ben looked down at his hands, avoiding everyone's eyes. Chloe leaned against Gloria's side, seeking comfort. Mr. Gerald, Lang Jason's longtime attorney, entered the room holding a thick folder. His gray hair was combed neatly, and his voice carried the gravity of someone used to holding family secrets. "Thank you for coming," he said, glancing at each of them. "I know this is a difficult time." Rachel gave a tight nod. "There's no easy way to begin these matters," Gerald continued. Jason made significant amendments to his will approximately 6 weeks before his passing. These were conducted privately with full legal oversight and verified by his physician for competence. Rachel blinked. "I'm sorry." What she asked. Her voice still polite, but with a sharp edge beneath the surface. "He came to see me personally. Said he had specific wishes regarding his estate. Everything I'm about to read reflects his legally binding intent." Gloria felt her heart pound like a drum in her chest. She had known Jason had done something. Before he died, he'd whispered to her, "Mom, I made arrangements." She hadn't understood what he meant. Not until now. Gerald cleared his throat. "First, regarding the family home on Willow Glen and the vacation property in Big Bear, both are to be placed in the Whitman Family Trust. Gloria Whitman is named trustee and holds lifetime occupancy rights. Upon her passing, both properties will be transferred equally to Ben and Chloe Whitman." Silence. Then Rachel leaned forward, her voice barely restrained. "That home was in both our names. Jason can't just... He transferred his portion into the trust 3 years ago." "Your signature is on the documents," Gerald replied. "The Big Bear property was never in your name at all." Gloria kept her gaze steady on the polished table, afraid that if she met Rachel's eyes, her face would give away too much. Gerald continued, flipping the page. "Jason's retirement accounts, totaling approximately $820,000, are to be divided as follows: 60% into a trust for Ben and Chloe's education and living expenses with Gloria named as trustee. 20% is allocated directly to Gloria for her care. The remaining 20% goes to Rachel Whitman." Rachel's face turned pale. "That's it," she whispered. 20%. Jason's instructions were clear, Gerald said calmly. He wanted to ensure his children and mother were cared for without question. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "No, I don't accept this." He wasn't in his right mind. He was on morphine. "This will is invalid." Gerald didn't flinch. "We have documentation from his attending physician confirming he was of sound mind at the time of these changes." Additionally, Jason left a sealed letter with further instructions to be opened only if the will was contested. He placed a cream-colored envelope on the table. Her name was written on it in Jason's handwriting. Rachel stared at it like it was a bomb. "We can proceed with that now, or continue with the rest of the reading." Rachel sat back down, jaw tight. "Continue." Gerald nodded. "Jason's shares in Whitman Design Group will be held in a transitional trust. 75% to be managed for Ben and Chloe until they reach the age of 25. The remaining 25% will be allocated to current employees through a profit-sharing plan." Jason specified this was his way of honoring the people who built the company with him. Gloria couldn't stop the tear that slipped from her eye. This was her son. Fair protective, always thinking 2 steps ahead. Rachel's voice broke the moment. "And what about me? What do I live on?" Gerald looked up from the documents. Jason authorized a monthly allowance of $3,000 for 5 years, or until you remarry, whichever comes first. The air in the room turned ice cold. Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "Remarry? That's rich. My husband just died." Gerald's eyes narrowed slightly. Jason was thorough. Gloria didn't need to look up to see Rachel's fury. She could feel it pulsing in the air like heat. But beneath that rage, she sensed something else too: fear. Fear that the game she thought she had mastered was crumbling under her feet. And for the first time since Jason's diagnosis, Gloria felt something unexpected rise in her chest: strength. The moment the final clause was read, Rachel exploded like a lit fuse. She shoved back from the table so violently that the chair tipped and fell behind her with a crash. Her fists clenched at her sides, and her voice, sharp and full of fury, cut through the still air. "This is absurd," she yelled. "My husband would never do this. He must have been tricked, manipulated." Gloria stayed seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though her knuckles had turned white from the pressure. She didn't look up. She didn't have to. Rachel was pacing now, her heels striking the hardwood floor like gunshots. "You," she spat, turning toward Gloria. "You did this. You poisoned him against me. You waited until he was too sick to fight back and filled his head with lies." Gerald Lang didn't flinch. "Rachel, I assure you, don't. Don't you tell me anything," she snapped. Her eyes, rimmed in anger, glared at him, then snapped back to Gloria. "You always acted so sweet," the grieving old lady. "But you're nothing but a conniving witch. You couldn't stand that Jason loved me." Gloria finally raised her head. Her eyes were steady, tired, but unbroken. "He did love you, Rachel," she said quietly. "But he also saw who you really were before the end." Rachel's face twisted. "You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll take this to court. I'll have every cent this family owes me." Gerald cleared his throat. "That's your legal right. However, I must remind you, should you choose to contest, I am obligated to present Jason's final letter and additional materials he provided." Rachel's gaze darted to the cream envelope on the table, the one with her name in Jason's looping handwriting. She hesitated, visibly shaken for the first time. Her bravado wavered, if only for a second. She didn't know what was in that envelope. She didn't know what else Jason might have planned. But Gloria did. Back at home, the house was silent. Rachel locked herself in the master bedroom, slamming the door so hard a framed photo in the hallway rattled against the wall. Gloria sat in the guest room, the one Rachel had once said would be hers until the end, and stared at the small wooden box on her nightstand. Inside was the USB drive Jason had given her. "Mom," he had whispered from his hospital bed just days before slipping into unconsciousness, "I made sure you'll be okay. But if anything goes wrong, if she fights it, use this. Promise me." She had promised. She just hadn't expected to need it so soon. With trembling fingers, she opened her laptop and plugged in the drive. Folders popped up, clearly labeled: financials, emails, audio. She clicked through them, her breath catching, as the truth unfolded in front of her like a storm. Bank records showed Rachel had been siphoning funds from their joint accounts into an account solely in her name. Transfers marked as business expenses or children's education actually ended up in luxury clothing boutiques, weekend resorts, and even jewelry stores. The email folder was worse. Dozens of messages exchanged between Rachel and a man named Eric, her so-called business partner, described more than just meetings and open houses. There were love notes, getaway plans, and thinly veiled comments about the old woman being someone else's problem soon. But the real dagger was the audio folder. Jason's voice, weak but clear, recorded from his hospital bed. Conversations between him and Rachel, where she carelessly revealed her plans to put Gloria in a facility as soon as Jason passed. A hidden recording from their living room where she laughed with Eric about finally getting the old bat out of the way. Gloria sat frozen, her breath shallow. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. But amid the pain bloomed something else: clarity. Jason hadn't been fooled. He had seen what Rachel was doing even as he was dying. He had worked quietly to protect his children and his mother, leaving behind a blueprint to dismantle the scheme Rachel thought she'd gotten away with. When Rachel emerged from the bedroom hours later, Gloria didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The calm in her eyes, the poise in her posture, it was enough to unnerve her daughter-in-law. "Enjoy it while you can," Rachel muttered as she passed by. "You won't keep it, I'll make sure of that." Gloria watched her go, then reached into her nightstand drawer and placed the USB back inside the box. She smiled to herself, a quiet, knowing smile. Let her try. The papers came 3 days later, slid under the door like a snake, slithering into the house. Gloria found the thick envelope on the mat and stared at it for a long time before picking it up. Her name was printed in cold, impersonal type across the front, Gloria Whitman, respondent. Her heart sank. She didn't need to open it to know who it was from, but she did anyway. Inside, she found the formal language of a legal attack petition to contest the will accusations, of undue influence declarations, of Jason's alleged mental incompetence during the revisions. Page after page of sharp words and calculated lies. Her hands shook as she read. According to Rachel's attorney, Gloria had taken advantage of a terminally ill man, convincing him to make significant changes to his estate while he was medicated and emotionally vulnerable. The documents alleged Gloria had isolated Jason from his wife, pressured him into changing the beneficiaries, and had a long-standing history of overreaching behavior. By the end, Gloria's chest felt tight. This wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was a smear campaign. Rachel wasn't just trying to steal the inheritance, she was trying to rewrite history. The worst part, Gloria had no money to defend herself. Everything she had, her house, her savings, even Harold's life insurance, had gone into the home Rachel now claimed as hers. She had trusted her family. That trust had become her greatest vulnerability. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the papers, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. That's where her phone rang. "Gloria, it's Elaine." Elaine Maddox had been her best friend since high school. They had shared everything over the years, childhood crushes, retirement plans, grief. Elaine had also been a Superior Court judge before retiring last year. "I just heard," Elaine said gently. "Rachel filed, didn't she?" Gloria could barely find her voice. "She's accusing me of manipulating Jason, of controlling him when he was dying. She's projecting, and she's desperate." "I can't fight her," Gloria whispered. "I don't have the money for lawyers." Elaine didn't hesitate. "Yes, you can. And you will. There's someone you need to talk to, Marion Liu. She's sharp, fearless, and specializes in elder law. I'll call her myself and explain your situation." By evening, Marion had agreed to meet Gloria the following morning. Gloria showed up at the modest office, tucked behind a family-owned grocery store, nervous and unsure. But the moment she walked in and saw Marion's smart blouse, silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes like steel, she felt something she hadn't in weeks. Hope. Marion gestured to a chair and listened patiently as Gloria explained everything: the will, the overheard conversation, the USB, the lawsuit. She never interrupted. When Gloria finally fell silent, Marion tapped her pen against the table once and said, "This is elder abuse, plain and simple. She exploited your trust, then accused you of her own crimes." Gloria blinked. "Can we win?" "Absolutely," Marion said. "And we'll do it by the book. I'll file a response by Friday. I'll also motion to block any attempt she makes to evict you or freeze assets in the meantime. But I can't afford—" "We'll work something out," Marion said firmly. "You're not alone in this." It was the first time since Jason died that Gloria felt like she could breathe. The legal process began immediately. Rachel's attorney, a well-known shark named Gregory Parrish, filed motion after motion, each one laced with accusations meant to overwhelm. Gloria was portrayed as unstable, emotionally manipulative, even delusional. He referenced unsubstantiated claims of an affair, suggesting Gloria was fabricating stories out of grief. But Marion met every challenge with meticulous preparation and quiet force. She filed counters, blocked early eviction attempts, and insisted on psychological evaluations and independent reviews of Jason's will changes. Rachel, increasingly frustrated, escalated her attacks. She spread rumors to neighbors that Gloria was mentally declining, began restricting the grandchildren's time with her, and even called Child Protective Services, claiming concern for their emotional safety. It didn't work. Ben, now 15, saw through the lies. "Why is Mom doing this?" he asked Gloria one evening. "She keeps saying you're sick, but you're not." Gloria pulled him close. "Sometimes when people feel like they're losing control, they try to break others down to feel powerful. But you know the truth. And your dad knew it too." "Dad trusted you," Ben whispered. "So do I." That night, as Gloria lay in bed, her lawyer's words echoed in her head. "We exploited your trust. But now, thanks to Jason's foresight and Marion's resolve, the tables were finally turning." Rachel had started a war, but Gloria had something stronger: the truth. The war moved from courtrooms to living rooms, from legal papers to whispered rumors. Rachel didn't just want to win in court. She wanted to destroy Gloria's credibility entirely. Within a week, the neighbors who had once waved kindly when Gloria tended the garden now avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when she walked by. One even had the nerve to ask if she needed help remembering her name. Rachel had told them she was suffering from early-onset dementia. It spread like wildfire. Gloria Whitman, the poor confused old lady, who thought her dead son had left her everything. At the grocery store, she overheard a familiar voice say, "It's just sad, you know. Losing your son must have unhinged her." Rachel said she thinks she's being persecuted. Delusional, really. Gloria gritted her teeth and pushed her cart past them with as much dignity as she could muster. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But the hardest blows came from within her own home. Rachel began enforcing rules. "The children need structure," she said coldly. "They'll be doing homework in their rooms, no more afternoons with you, until we speak to a family counselor." Ben pushed back immediately. "That's not fair. Grandma's the only one who talks to us about Dad." "She's upsetting you," Rachel snapped. "You just don't realize it yet." Gloria watched helplessly as her access to her grandchildren slipped away like sand through fingers. Doors were closed, conversations were shortened. Even Chloe, only 13, began to hesitate before hugging her goodnight. Then came the worst moment. One evening, Ben stood in the kitchen holding a crumpled flyer Rachel had brought home from a memory care center. "She's sending you away," he asked, voice breaking. Gloria felt her heart lurch. "What Mom said, it's just temporary, that it's for your safety." "But are you sick, Grandma? Are you losing your memory?" She knelt in front of him, her knees aching, but her voice steady. "Sweetheart, no. I'm not sick. I'm not losing my memory. I'm not going anywhere unless a court tells me to, and even then I'll fight it with everything I have." Tears welled in Ben's eyes. Then why would she say all that? Gloria chose her words carefully. "Sometimes people try to rewrite the truth to fit what they want. But I promise you I am of sound mind. And I love you both more than anything in this world." Chloe peeked into the kitchen, eyes wary. "Grandma, is it true you're trying to take everything from Mom?" Gloria felt the stab, but she didn't flinch. "No, darling. Your father left things the way he wanted." "I didn't ask him to. I didn't know about it until after. He made those choices because he wanted to protect you. And yes, me." Chloe nodded slowly. "That's what Ben said." Later that night, when the children were asleep, Gloria stood by the kitchen sink, staring out at the backyard. The garden Jason had planted, the swing he built with his own hands. It all felt like sacred ground now. Rachel had poisoned the air in this home, but she hadn't taken the memories. Not yet. The next morning, Marion came by early with a thumb drive and her usual no-nonsense energy. "I've gone through everything Jason left," she said, placing the drive on the table. Bank transfers, emails, voice recordings. "It's worse than we thought," Gloria exhaled slowly. "I know," Marion nodded. She was planning this for a long time. The siphoned funds, the real estate maneuvering, even her affair. "It's all here. We'll introduce it once the judge rules on preliminary motions." "But, Gloria," she leaned in, her voice gentle for once, "you have to hold steady. The next few weeks, Rachel's going to keep pressing. She'll try to isolate you even more, break you down. Don't let her." "I won't," Gloria said softly. "I owe that to Jason." Marion offered a rare smile. "Good. Because when this goes to court, she won't know what hit her." But even with that assurance, Gloria knew the days ahead wouldn't be easy. Rachel was ruthless. She'd already convinced half the neighborhood she was unstable. She was trying to turn the children too. Gloria wasn't just fighting for a house or money anymore. She was fighting for her son's legacy and her right to belong to the family she helped build. And she was far from done. The night Rachel left for what she called a real estate mixer, Gloria sat in the den alone with her thoughts. The air was unusually still. Not the peaceful kind, more like the eye of a storm. Her hands rested in her lap, but her fingers twitched with unease. There had been something in Rachel's tone, something almost smug. Earlier that afternoon, Gloria had caught her rifling through Jason's old office. She'd claimed she was clearing space, but Gloria saw the desperation in her movements, yanking open drawers, lifting folders, only to toss them aside like they meant nothing. She was looking for something. But what Gloria waited until she heard the front door shut. Then Rachel's tires peel out of the driveway. That was her cue. She walked slowly to the office. Jason's office. Even after his death, she still thought of it that way. The air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. The room looked the same, framed photos on the wall, awards from architecture school. A drawing of a treehouse Ben had made in 3rd grade. She sat at the desk, pulled open the lower drawer, and began checking every folder. Bills, warranties, medical records, nothing. Then her eye caught the edge of a tax return file with a slight bulge beneath it. Curious, she lifted the file, and there it was, taped underneath a small manila envelope, labeled Mom in Jason's handwriting. Her heart pounded. She peeled the tape away with trembling fingers, opened the envelope, and found a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Mom, if you're reading this, things didn't go the way I hoped. I tried to fix it all, but the cancer stole my time. This drive contains everything I found: emails, account statements, and recordings. I started documenting it after I noticed things weren't adding up. I never wanted to believe Rachel would hurt you, or the kids. But I couldn't ignore what I saw. Use this if she comes after you. I love you. Take care of Ben and Chloe. Jason." Gloria pressed the note to her chest and wept. It took her nearly half an hour to collect herself, enough to walk to her room and plug the USB into her laptop. The folders were neatly labeled: financial records, email threads, recordings. She started with the finances. Spreadsheets documented multiple transfers from Jason and Rachel's joint accounts into one, labeled R. Whitman Holdings LLC, a company Gloria had never heard of. The transactions were disguised as property maintenance, childcare expenses, and business costs. But the records showed the money being funneled into a private account, one only Rachel had access to. The emails were worse. Messages exchanged with a man named Eric, dating back almost 2 years, chronicled an affair that had blossomed while Jason was in chemotherapy. "Once he's gone, we'll finally be free," one message read. "She's practically dead weight now. I'll put her in that place by spring," Rachel had typed. Gloria's stomach turned. The recordings were the final blow. Jason's voice, thin but resolute, could be heard in conversations with Rachel. She didn't know she was being recorded. One file captured her laughing about the old bat in the guest room, claiming she already had a spot reserved for her at Maple Pines, a nursing home infamous for understaffing. "Once she's out of the picture, the rest is easy. I'll liquidate everything," Rachel had said. Gloria closed the laptop slowly, her mind reeling. But beneath the swirl of emotions, shock, betrayal, sorrow, there was resolve. Jason had done this for her. The next morning, she called Marion. "I have something," Gloria said simply. "You need to see it." Marion arrived within the hour. They sat at the kitchen table while Gloria walked her through the files. Marion took notes with quiet intensity, her lips pressed into a thin line. When she heard the recording, her eyebrows lifted slightly. "This is gold," she murmured. "Will it hold up in court?" Gloria asked. Marion looked up. "Absolutely. Your state only requires one-party consent for recordings. Jason had every right to document this. The financial evidence alone is damning. But this, the emails, the voice files, they show premeditated fraud. Elder abuse. Possibly worse." Gloria exhaled slowly. "Then let's use it. We will. But we'll time it right," Marion said. "Let her keep bluffing. When we drop this, she won't have anywhere left to stand." That night, Gloria slept for the first time in weeks. The storm wasn't over. But now, she had the lightning. The courtroom was smaller than Gloria expected, modest, with wood-paneled walls and rows of worn leather benches. Still, it felt enormous. The air crackled with unspoken tension as the parties settled in. Gloria sat next to Marion at the defense table, back straight, hands folded, to still their trembling. Rachel sat across the aisle with her attorney, Gregory Parrish. She wore a sleek navy dress and pearls, every inch the grieving widow except for the thin line of fury twitching at the corner of her mouth. Judge Caroline Merritt presided, calm, silver-haired, and sharply observant. She leafed through documents before glancing up. "This hearing addresses the petition to contest the will of Jason Whitman," she said. "Mrs. Rachel Whitman alleges undue influence and mental incapacity. Ms. Marion Liu represents the respondent Gloria Whitman and has submitted evidence in support of dismissal." "We'll begin with testimony." Marion stood composed. "Your Honor, I'd like to call a rebuttal witness, Eric Prescott." Rachel's head snapped toward the door. What the doors opened, and in walked Eric, tall, sandy-haired, clearly uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. He glanced once at Rachel, then fixed his eyes on the floor as he took the stand. Rachel sprang to her feet. "This is a violation. Mrs. Whitman, the judge warned you. Will have your turn." Marion approached the witness box. "Mr. Prescott, could you state your relationship with Rachel Whitman?" Eric hesitated. We've been involved, romantically, for almost 2 years." A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Rachel's face flushed. "He's lying." "Order," Judge Merritt said firmly. Marion continued. "Were you aware of Rachel's husband's condition during this time?" Eric nodded. "She said Jason was dying, that he was too weak to know what was going on. We talked about what would happen after." "What did she tell you about Gloria Whitman?" Eric swallowed. "She called her a burden, said she was old, getting confused, that once Jason passed, she'd put her in a home and sell the house." Rachel lurched to her feet again. "You traitor, Mrs. Whitman, sit down or you will be removed," Judge Merritt barked. Rachel sat shaking with rage. Marion handed a set of printed emails to the clerk. "Your Honor, these are authenticated emails between Mr. Prescott and Mrs. Whitman. We also have voice recordings made legally by Jason Whitman detailing these plans. The contents support Jason's decision to change his will and expose a pattern of deception and financial mismanagement by the petitioner." Judge Merritt nodded. "I've reviewed these materials in chambers. They are admissible. Do you have further questions for the witness?" "No, Your Honor." Gregory Parrish stood clearly rattled. "Mr. Prescott, is it possible," Mrs. Whitman was speaking emotionally, "that she didn't mean to follow through?" Eric shrugged. "She was serious. She had already toured nursing homes. She even sent me listings. That was enough." Parrish didn't ask more. After a short recess, Judge Merritt returned with her ruling. Her gaze landed first on Gloria. "I find that the will presented reflects the clear, conscious intent of Jason Whitman. Evidence submitted by the respondent, including voice recordings written, communication and corroborated witness testimony, demonstrates the decedent was aware of his estate and deliberate in his revisions. She turned to Rachel. The petitioner's allegations of undue influence and mental incompetence are unsupported and contradicted by overwhelming evidence. Therefore, the petition to contest the will is dismissed in its entirety. Rachel's mouth parted, as if to protest, but nothing came out. The courtroom was silent. Gloria felt the tightness in her chest begin to release. Slowly, carefully. She looked over at Ben and Chloe, seated quietly in the second row. Ben gave her a small nod. Chloe reached for his hand. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Marion guided Gloria past them with professional precision. "You did it," Gloria whispered. "No," Marion replied, her tone softening. "Jason did. You just carried it across the finish line." Back in the car, Gloria looked out the window as downtown passed in a blur. The courtroom, the lawyers, the shouting, it was behind her now. What remained was the truth, solid and immovable. Jason had seen what needed to be done, and he'd done it not just for himself, but for his children and for her. And now, finally, justice had spoken. 2 years had passed. 2 seasons of healing, of laughter that no longer carried a shadow of waking up without that heavy weight pressing against Gloria's chest. She now lived peacefully in the house Rachel once tried to strip from her, the same house Jason had protected with his final breath. The halls no longer echoed with tension. They were filled instead with the sounds of Ben's teenage voice muttering equations under his breath, the scent of Chloe's acrylic paints drifting from the converted sunroom-turned-art studio, and Gloria's favorite music playing softly on Sunday mornings while breakfast sizzled on the stove. Rachel had left the state not long after the court's decision. She took her 20% from Jason's retirement account and moved to Nevada with Eric. Within 6 months, the relationship fizzled. Apparently, the future they'd imagined was less romantic once it was stripped of stolen wealth and secret rendezvous. The last anyone heard, she was living in a rented condo and working in a different real estate firm, smaller, less prestigious. She hadn't called the children in over a year. When she finally forfeited custody, there was no protest, no plea. Gloria didn't celebrate her absence, but she didn't mourn it either. Ben, now 16, stood taller than her and had taken to shadowing the senior board members of Whitman Design Group on weekends. He wanted to study both business and architecture, he said, to combine his dad's vision with practicality. "I want to be someone Dad would be proud of," he told her one night as they cleaned up after dinner. Gloria had turned and cupped his face, smiling through misty eyes. "You already are." Chloe, ever the artist, had blossomed. She spent hours sketching floor plans and room layouts, coloring in windows with rays of sunlight, and planting gardens with her colored pencils. She had applied to a pre-college summer program at an arts institute and had just received her acceptance letter. "You're going to change the world," Gloria had said, watching her granddaughter twirl with joy in the living room. As for Gloria herself, she had begun to rediscover the woman she'd set aside for so many years. It started with a book club at the local library, then a watercolor class on Wednesday mornings, eventually a community garden where she met Frank Morgan, a retired electrician with warm eyes and a knack for growing tomatoes. They started as gardening partners. Then came coffee. Then shared laughter over lunches. Frank was gentle and unassuming. He never pried, never overstepped. He asked about Jason once and then listened without interrupting. Gloria didn't rush anything. She didn't have to. After all she'd endured, she'd learned that joy didn't need to be loud or immediate. Sometimes it arrived like sunlight creeping across a windowsill. Quiet, steady, true. The house, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary. Gloria had redecorated the master bedroom. Gone were the cold, angular furnishings Rachel once favored. In their place, soft linens, warm tones, the faint scent of lavender from a dish by the window. It was a space that belonged to her finally and fully. She kept one photo on her nightstand, Jason smiling with the kids on a hiking trip, his arm around Ben, Chloe on his shoulders. Sometimes when the house was quiet and the moon cast soft light across the room, she'd speak to the photo. "We're doing okay," she'd whisper. "You did good, son." On the anniversary of Jason's passing, the three of them visited his grave, as they did each year. The cemetery was quiet, the wind brushing gently through the trees. Ben laid down fresh lilies. Chloe knelt to trace the engraved letters with her fingers. They shared stories. The time Jason burned pancakes on Father's Day and insisted they eat them anyway. The silly songs he'd make up during long car rides. The jokes he told, always bad, always making them laugh. Standing there in the warm sunlight, Gloria looked at her grandchildren and felt a profound, steady peace. Not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of something stronger. Resilience, love, continuity. "Dad would love to see us happy again," Ben said, his voice barely above a whisper. Gloria reached for his hand. "He does," she said softly. "I believe he sees everything." As they walked back to the car, Chloe looked up at her grandmother. "You know what I think, Grandma? What's that, sweet girl? I think Dad gave us one last gift. He gave us each other." Gloria smiled, the kind of smile that went all the way to her soul. Rachel's scheme had failed. Her bitterness had vanished into the background. What remained was a family rebuilt real and bound by something far stronger than money. They had survived. They had grown. And more than anything, they had reclaimed their life.